From the outside, they looked like the perfect American family, but behind the walls of their beautiful home, a buried secret was waiting to destroy everything. One stormy night, a hidden basement, a mysterious photograph, and a single deadly lie would pull Rebecca Lawson into a nightmare she never saw coming. Because the man she married wasn't who he claimed to be, and someone out there wanted the truth buried forever. The morning sun spilled through the wide kitchen windows of the beautiful two-story house on Willow Creek Lane, painting soft golden lines across the polished marble counters. Everything about the home looked perfect. The family photographs hanging neatly on the walls showed smiling faces during vacations, birthday celebrations, and holiday dinners. Neighbors often slowed their cars when driving past the property, admiring the carefully trimmed hedges, the white porch swing, and the peaceful image of the family who lived there. To the outside world, Daniel and Rebecca Lawson seemed to have built the kind of life most people only dreamed about in quiet moments late at night. Daniel Lawson was known throughout the small suburban town as a calm and dependable man. He worked as a financial consultant in downtown Chicago, and had spent years building a reputation for honesty and professionalism. Every morning, he left home at exactly 7:30 wearing a neatly pressed suit, carrying the same leather briefcase he had owned for nearly a decade. Rebecca, on the other hand, was admired for her kindness and warmth. She volunteered at community events, organized neighborhood gatherings, and somehow always remembered everyone's birthdays. People described her as graceful, intelligent, and deeply caring. Together, they appeared inseparable. Friends often joked that they were the perfect American couple. But perfection can sometimes become its own carefully constructed disguise. Inside the Lawson home, subtle cracks had slowly begun to form beneath the polished surface. Daniel had become distant during the past year. He spent longer hours at work, answered phone calls in private, and often seemed distracted even during family dinners. Rebecca noticed the changes immediately, though she never confronted him directly. Instead, she buried herself deeper into routines, hoping normalcy would somehow repair the growing silence between them. Their 17-year-old daughter, Emily, sensed the tension as well. She frequently caught her parents exchanging uneasy glances when they thought she wasn't looking. Conversations that once filled the house with laughter had gradually been replaced by uncomfortable quiet. One cold November evening, a heavy storm rolled across the town. Rain pounded against the windows while sharp winds rattled the old maple trees outside. Emily sat upstairs finishing homework while Rebecca prepared dinner in the kitchen. Daniel arrived home nearly 2 hours later than usual. The moment he walked through the front door, Rebecca noticed something unsettling in his expression. His face looked pale, almost shaken. Water dripped from his coat as he placed his briefcase on the counter without speaking. "You're late," Rebecca finally said gently. Daniel hesitated before answering. Work was complicated. His voice sounded strained, far different from the calm tone he usually carried. Rebecca studied him carefully. There was mud on his shoes, and one sleeve of his coat appeared slightly torn. Before she could ask another question, Daniel quickly walked upstairs toward the bedroom. That night, Rebecca barely slept. Around 2 in the morning, she noticed Daniel quietly leaving the bed. Curious and uneasy, she followed him silently down the hallway. From the shadows near the staircase, she watched him enter the basement carrying a flashlight. A few seconds later, she heard the faint sound of metal scraping against concrete. Rebecca stood frozen. The basement had always been Daniel's private workspace. He kept old tools, storage boxes, and filing cabinets there. He rarely allowed anyone inside, often claiming he simply preferred keeping things organized his own way. Rebecca had never questioned it before. But something about his behavior that night felt deeply wrong. As the storm intensified outside, Rebecca slowly stepped closer to the basement door. Her heartbeat pounded in her chest while dim light flickered beneath the narrow crack at the bottom of the door. She could hear Daniel breathing heavily. Then came another strange sound, like plastic being dragged across the floor. Fear crept into her mind for the first time in years. Suddenly, the basement light switched off. Rebecca quickly backed away and rushed upstairs before Daniel could see her. Moments later, he returned to bed beside her without saying a single word. His hands felt ice cold. The following morning, Daniel acted completely normal. He smiled during breakfast, joked with Emily about school, and kissed Rebecca goodbye before leaving for work. Yet Rebecca could not shake the memory of what she had heard downstairs. The image replayed constantly in her thoughts throughout the day. That afternoon, while cleaning the garage, Rebecca noticed Daniel's car parked unusually close to the side storage area. Something dark stained the edge of the trunk carpet. At first glance, it looked like spilled motor oil. But when she leaned closer, her stomach tightened with dread. The stain had a deep reddish-brown color. Before she could examine it further, Daniel unexpectedly returned home early. For a brief moment, panic flashed across his face when he saw Rebecca near the vehicle. But the expression vanished almost instantly, replaced by his usual calm smile. "Car trouble," he explained casually. "I came home to grab some paperwork." Rebecca forced a smile, though her knees twisted inside her chest. Daniel closed the trunk quickly and guided her back toward the house with unusual urgency. That evening, Rebecca made a decision she never imagined she would have to make. After Daniel fell asleep, she quietly took his basement key from the nightstand drawer. Her hands trembled as she crept downstairs through the silent house. The basement door slowly opened with a soft creak. At first, everything appeared ordinary. Shelves lined with storage bins stood neatly against the walls. Tools hung in perfect order above an old workbench. But then Rebecca noticed a large blue top lying across the far corner of the room. The concrete beneath it looked recently cleaned, almost unnaturally spotless compared to the dusty floor around it. A terrible feeling settled over her. Rebecca's breathing stopped. Daniel was awake. Rebecca quickly shoved the documents back beneath the top, though her racing thoughts made it impossible to organize them the way she had found them. Her breathing became shallow as she listened carefully. The footsteps stopped directly above her. For several long seconds, silence swallowed the entire house. Then came the soft creak of the basement door handle. Rebecca turned toward the stairs. Daniel stood at the top of the staircase, partially hidden in darkness. The dim hallway light behind him cast a long shadow down the steps. His expression looked calm at first glance, but his eyes told a different story entirely. They carried a sharp intensity Rebecca had never seen before in all their years together. "What are you doing down there?" he asked quietly. His voice remained controlled, almost gentle, yet something beneath the calmness felt dangerous. Rebecca struggled to answer. I heard noises earlier. I thought maybe there was a leak after the storm." Daniel slowly descended the stairs one step at a time without breaking eye contact. Rebecca noticed he was no longer pretending to smile. The carefully polished version of her husband, the friendly neighbor, the dependable professional, the loving father, seemed to fade with every step he took downward. When he finally reached the basement floor, his eyes drifted toward the slightly disturbed top. For the first time in years, Daniel Lawson looked genuinely cornered. "You shouldn't be down here," he said softly. Rebecca swallowed hard. "Who are they?" Daniel remained silent. "The woman in the photograph," Rebecca continued, her voice trembling. "And the little boy. Who are they?" For several seconds, Daniel simply stared at her, as if debating how much truth he could allow into the room. Then, to Rebecca's surprise, his tense posture slowly relaxed. He pulled out a nearby chair and sat down heavily, rubbing both hands across his face in exhaustion. "It was a long time ago," he finally muttered. Rebecca could barely process what she was hearing. "So they are real?" Daniel nodded once. The answer hit Rebecca harder than she expected. For years, she believed she knew every part of the man she married, his habits, his history, his fears, his dreams. Yet standing in that basement, surrounded by hidden documents and false identities, she suddenly realized she might never have truly known him at all. Daniel leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Before I met you, my life was very different." Rain continued tapping against the basement windows while Rebecca listened in frozen silence. Daniel explained that nearly 20 years earlier, he had lived in another state under a different name. Back then, he worked for a private investment company that handled large financial accounts for wealthy clients. The job brought money, influence, and connections, but according to Daniel, it also exposed him to dangerous people operating behind polished corporate walls. At first, he ignored the warning signs. Missing funds. Secret accounts. Transactions that made no sense. He convinced himself it was none of his business. Until one night changed everything. Daniel claimed he discovered evidence linking several powerful executives to a massive fraud operation involving stolen retirement funds. Millions of dollars had vanished from ordinary families who trusted the company with their savings. According to him, when he threatened to expose what he found, certain people decided he had become a liability. Rebecca listened carefully, though uncertainty filled her mind. Some parts of Daniel's story sounded believable. Other parts felt carefully rehearsed. "I tried to leave," Daniel continued quietly. "But once you know certain secrets, people don't just let you walk away." Rebecca stared at him. "So you disappeared?" Daniel nodded again. He explained that he abandoned his old identity, cut ties with everyone from his previous life, and eventually rebuilt himself as Daniel Lawson. Years later, he met Rebecca, started a family, and tried to bury the past permanently. For a while, he believed he had succeeded. Until recently. "Someone found me," he admitted. A chill ran through Rebecca's body. Daniel stood and walked toward one of the locked containers beneath the top. Slowly, he opened it and removed a thin envelope. Inside were several photographs taken from a distance. Rebecca's heart sank when she recognized herself in one picture leaving a grocery store. Emily appeared in another photograph outside her school. "They've been watching us," Daniel whispered. Rebecca felt her knees weaken. "Who?" she asked. Daniel hesitated before answering. "People connected to the old company. I thought they were gone. I thought it was over." Rebecca's mind raced wildly. Fear mixed with confusion until she no longer knew what to believe. Part of her wanted to trust him. Another part noticed how carefully he chose every word. Then she remembered the stain in the trunk of his car. Her expression changed instantly. Daniel noticed. "What?" he asked cautiously. Rebecca stepped backward. "What happened last night?" The room became silent again. "You came home covered in mud," she said slowly. "There was something in your trunk. And you were down here in the middle of the night." Daniel's jaw tightened. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me the truth." For the first time, during the entire conversation, Daniel looked nervous. He walked toward the workbench and opened another drawer. Inside rested a small revolver. Rebecca gasped softly and stumbled backward. Daniel immediately raised both hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." But the sight of the weapon shattered whatever safety remained between them. "I found someone outside the house yesterday," Daniel admitted carefully. "A man sitting in a car across the street. He followed me after work." Rebecca stared at him in horror. "What did you do?" Daniel looked away. Hours earlier, during the storm, Daniel had driven toward an isolated industrial area, after noticing the same black sedan following him through traffic. According to him, the unknown driver eventually cornered him near an abandoned warehouse. A confrontation followed in the heavy rain. Daniel claimed the man threatened Rebecca and Emily directly. Then the situation escalated. "There was a struggle," Daniel said quietly. "The man fell and hit his head." Rebecca's blood ran cold. "Is he dead?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Finally, he whispered, "I don't know." Terror filled the basement. Rebecca suddenly realized how dangerous everything had become. Whether Daniel was telling the complete truth, or hiding something far worse, one fact remained undeniable: the peaceful life she believed she had built was collapsing around her piece by piece. And somewhere outside the Lawson home, hidden in darkness beyond the storm, someone else might already be watching the house.